It was a mysterious world. The darkness was like a poisonous snake. It also looks at its prey, waiting for the right moment. Where the higher powers of predators can often disguise themselves as peaceful residents. And if you are not careful, they will use this to their advantage. Vampires, cyborgs, puppets, and ghosts. They are everywhere in this world, even in human blood. The most horrible monsters imaginable live here. In this world, he was an apprentice in a regular pharmacy. And I had to stay calm at all times. Because if he shows even a little fear, the darkness will swallow him up. This is the same truth that he came to during 2 years of traveling around the world. And for 2 years he did only one thing. The teacher asked Lin to turn off the light and get ready because it was getting late. His teacher, Shiju, gave him a mission to open a door and hang a soul lamp on the door. The reward for completing the mission, a skull coin, basic experience, pure human blood. It was the same system. It finally happened after 2 years of transition to this world. There was no time to deal with it now. He was ready to fulfill his teacher's order at any cost. A teacher who had recently returned appeared before him. In the distant past, he would have likely fainted from such a thing. But now he is used to almost everything. 2 years ago, the teacher was the one who saved him. In return, he started studying medicine with him and helping him with his cases. Their lives were quite ordinary, but they had nothing to complain about. They were able to survive in this, and that was the whole truth. It was a miracle in a world of fear. Lin lit a ceramic candle and scary monsters started flying out of it. With this lantern, he went into the basement. He received skull coins, basic experience, and human blood for an easy quest. A scary old woman appeared in front of him and asked him to give her at least some garbage. He didn't feel sorry for the old woman. He had to remember that scavengers prey on human skin. His additional task was to share the unwanted garbage with the dragonfly. The reward for this was the scavenger's obedience, coins, and skull coins. Lin asked to wait for 1 minute. It was a scavenger. And he needed to get rid of it quickly. He brought her a pile of garbage. And put it next to her. She thanked him and he received a reward for his work, the humility of a scavenger and skull coins. She emphasized that the boy had a very good heart. She gave him a reward from herself. He could either accept the reward from the scavenger or refuse, but there was a price to pay. If he refused, he would lose his obedience to the scavenger. He decided to accept the award from his grandmother and thanked her. She gave him the gift and left. It was the tailor's eye, the pig's eye, and the scavenger's blessing. This day, like the others, was not without surprises. He heard from his teacher that there was an atelier and a butcher shop nearby. He peered through the crack of the door. Tailors sew with human skin, and human parts are sold in the shop. The scavenger had just given the boy the shopkeeper's eyes. There is another rule in this world. Never condemn a creature from the darkness, because you never know when you will find yourself in it. The teacher was still busy, so Lin had time to figure out the system. It was a character's game panel. It looked the same as in many games. As he completes the task, his level and skills increase, and the number of rewards increases. Thus, his chances of survival increase. Lin's teacher came into the room and said that he had to leave and would be back in 2 days. He asked me to keep an eye on the store, to lock the doors so that these annoying bandits could not steal anything. His teacher gave him the task of keeping an eye on the store. Reward skull coins, basic experience, special reward. Penalty for not completing the task. He would have to donate his potions to the shop. He asked if there was anything else he should know before the teacher left. Those who have money can get their goods for money. And those who do not have money must offer something equivalent to money. If we talk about those who do not have money and do not want to exchange, they will take a knife and perform the operation themselves. Lin received a special object. A silver teacher's knife. After he finishes all his chores, he has to feed the baby, because he hasn't eaten for a long time. His teacher gave him a new task. He has to sort out the spoiled potions and give them to the baby. For this task, he will receive skull coins, the baby's mercy, and the skill of housework. If he hears any strange sounds nearby, he is strictly forbidden to leave the house. Even if it's voices calling for help or something else. At night, you need to close the doors and windows tightly and not make a sound. Even if they tearfully beg for help. Otherwise, he will die. He knew it all. These days would pass like an eternity for him. He sat at the table and looked at the knife his teacher had given him. He closed his eyes and at that moment someone started knocking very hard on his door. They asked if anyone was in the house. Lin went to the door, but did not take any other action. He looked through the crack. A bloody stranger was asking him to heal a wounded doll. The reward is skeleton coins, healing skill, and a special reward. On the other side stood a girl in bloody clothes with a doll in her arms and kept asking if anyone was in the house. She said that her doll was injured and asked for help. As long as Lin was in the light of the lamp, nothing could harm him. He let her in because she looked weak and defenseless enough. Because of the effect of the lamp, the enemy cannot enter the door unless he invites him in. Although this does not always work on omnipotent creatures. As a good worker, he had to fulfill a lot of orders to please his teacher. And the evil spirits in their alley cannot be murderers. They also need help. The most important thing is not to violate prohibitions when communicating with them. Because in the worst-case scenario, he would die. She said the doll was missing an arm and she couldn't find it. It was her favorite doll. And if they did not help her, she would die. The girl started crying a lot and begging for help. She was convinced that only Lin could help them. And she called him her brother. He replied that he would certainly be able to help and did not see any problems. The doll had teeth marks on its arm. It is difficult to say which species they belong to. But the liquid on the hand matches the doll's blood. The initial guess is that someone of the subject's species wanted to take her life and arm. He didn't think the system would be able to automatically make the primary diagnosis. He asked the girl how long it had been since she had eaten. She replied that it had been a long time since the last time. She was very hungry. The girl remembered what a delicious dinner she had eaten yesterday in her dream. Meat, hair, and ears. Everything she loved to eat. She shouted with joy and said it every time she tasted it. If the diagnosis was correct, then all his suspicions were correct. She was dreaming about food in her sleep and bit off her doll's arm. The doll kept repeating that she loved her mother. Lin asked if she had experienced any abdominal discomfort recently. She replied that she felt a very strong itching inside her abdomen. Then he was definitely right. The arm was still being assimilated into her body. He asked if she wanted to have surgery or physiotherapy. The girl looked like she was very afraid of the operation. She asked what he wanted to do with her. The boy grabbed the knife and threw it on the table. It stuck in the tree right next to the doll. Everything was very easy. He planned to cut open her stomach, pull out her arm, and sew it to the doll's body. She was considering physiotherapy because she was very scared of surgery. Lin said it was scary, but it would be much cheaper. This was enough to convince her to undergo the surgery. She agreed to it. The guy said he would help her. Lin asked how she would feel better. If he stretched his arm through the top or through the bottom. He asked her to calm down, because no matter where he would get his hand, he would be very careful. He asked the girl if she was ready. She was furious and said she didn't need a doctor anymore. But the guy insisted because his teacher said that everyone who comes to their store should get help. Otherwise, she will need to leave something more than money here. She agreed and said that in that case it would be better if he stretched his arm over the top. He asked her to lie down on a chair and open her mouth. But as soon as she opened it, almost the entire room was filled with a terrible smell. He put a dilator in her mouth, which did not allow the girl to close it, no matter how much she wanted to. He started the operation and stuck his hand through her mouth. Her eyes flew out of their sockets from pain and shock. He got hair and ears, Cantonese meat and a comb. He found her hand and pulled it out sharply. The girl was as if she was dying. Her face looked terrible. The guy took out her hand and began to wash it with water to get rid of unnecessary residues. One night she unknowingly ate her doll's hand. Hunger overcame her, and the doll remained silent and decided not to wake her up. In the future, she needs to be more careful not to eat things that her stomach can't digest. If she wanted him to sew the arm back on, it would cost 30 skeleton coins. Lin picked up the needle and began to thread it. The girl tried to say normally that she agreed, but nothing was clear through her stretched mouth. But the doll was screaming and refusing to do so. He asked me to hold the doll while he worked. The girl agreed and started holding the doll on the table. Lin began to sew the arm back on over the doll's screams. He concentrated on her arm and tried to do his job professionally so that you couldn't even tell the difference. The doll just screamed nonstop and resisted. But still, the doctor did his job perfectly. He gave the girl a potion and told her to apply it to her wounds once a day. And in less than a week, her wounds will heal. The doll started screaming again, jumped on the girl and shouted that she had to run. Lin announced the prices for his services. Medicines cost 10 coins, stitching a wound 30 coins, and a potion 70 coins. and a total of 110 coins. He thanked them for their visit and welcomed them back anytime. The girl put her hands over her mouth and stretched her hand forward. She opened it and said that she had only 20 coins. This was 90 coins less than they owed him. Lin was upset. She promised to return the rest later. But the guy said he could return everything to the way it was before the operation for free. She found 10 more coins, but still 80 coins were missing. She can also buy the medicine later and still owes 20 coins. She asked to remain in debt and pay back the money later. The guy replied that they had a nice enough shop, but they never lend money. He offered to keep one eye, the potion he had given them, but her debt would still be 40 coins. The girl asked to pay with something else. But although she argued, he set the price and it was final. She offered to pay with her body. The guy was confused. He said he would not accept such a payment. He needed her eye. It was the only way she could pay for all the services he had rendered them and for saving the doll. She would be able to return it when she paid off the debt. The doll begged her mother not to give the eye back, but she agreed. She took out her eye and put it in a glass. Lin received a rare item, the doll's right eye. His reward is skeleton coins, healing skill, housework skill, girl doll blessing and blood doll blessing. He placed all the items for convenience and said that their store would always welcome a visit. The girl said she would never go back to that store in her life. She said she had to find her mommy and ran away. Lin did not understand what had happened to her. He got a new task. The doll girl was looking for her mommy. He needed to help her. Reward for completing the task, the favor of the bloody doll, a special reward. The current percentage of task completion is 2%. On his plate were the hair of an unknown woman, the ears of an unknown woman, and an unknown woman's comb. If he was right, this girl had done something terrible. He decided to ask her about it the next time she came to their store. Nevertheless, Lin received many skull coins for completing all his tasks. They are the main currency in the world of fear. Thanks to them, you can survive in this world. But unfortunately, in 2 years, he hasn't been able to go outside the store and hasn't been able to find a place for them. It wasn't scary to save a lot of money. Because sooner or later he would be able to spend it. A pig-headed demon walked into their store. Lin greeted him and asked how he could help him. Because of the light from the lamp, monsters do not dare to attack first. Even if they do, he can attack them with magic light at any time. But the light of the lamp will not cope with a monster of his level. There are no rules in this world for people like him. He said that the damn old woman had knocked his eye out over something trivial. He promised to finish her off the next time he saw her. He asked to shout to the store manager to find a new eye for him. He would exchange it for a nice hunting haul. The teacher was away and Lin offered to help. A task from the pig-headed demon. Find a suitable eye for him. The reward is skeleton coins, healing experience, the demon's respect, and a special reward. He was not satisfied with this and needed a responsible person. The chance of danger was 89%. But he still agreed to Lin's help. Fortunately, he told the truth about his teacher's departure. If he had sensed a lie, he would have attacked. Lin said they have human eyes, pig eyes, death eyes, bat eyes, and bloody doll eyes. The prices for all the options are different. He asked which eye would suit him. He thought about it and answered after a minute that Lin's eye would be perfect for him. The level of danger is 91%. The demon asked if he could sell him his eye. The boy silently took out his eye and showed it to the monster. He said the price was 200 skeleton coins for one eye. If the product does not suit him, the money is not returned. The demon was in a stupor. It was impossible. When that woman was pulling out his eye, it was unrealistically painful for him. And this guy, an ordinary person, tore out his eye without any emotion on his face. The chance of danger was reduced to 50%. The demon thought that he was not a person. That the owner had turned him into a monster. He added that he did not need his eye. He needed his eye, so he asked the guy to relax because they didn't have one. The danger level has been reduced to 45%. Lin put his eye back in and said he had an eye for the demon. He did not understand at first. Then Lin gave him an eye and asked him to look at it. It was his personal eye. But he didn't understand how he got it. This morning, he met a kind old lady who decided to give him this gift for Lena. This scavenger was a real monster that could easily leave him without a head. It turns out that she gave the eye to an ordinary apprentice. The chance of danger is reduced to 20%. The demon asked how he could offer him the eye if the old woman had given it to Lin. The boy replied that she hadn't given it to him, but had sold it for 200 skeleton coins. It turns out that he is not at all afraid of the old woman's anger. So he decided that it would be wise to buy his eye. The chance of danger was reduced to 10%. Lin suggested that the demon insert the eye on his operating table or on the spot. The demon decided not to risk falling under the knife of a pharmacist from the alley of wandering souls. Lin asked me to keep my head straight and not move. If it hurts, he said he could scream. The demon assured me that he was not afraid of pain and was not afraid of any torture. Lin pulled out a knife. He held it to the candle to heat it up. The demon asked if it was necessary to use a knife to set the eye. It was strange to him. But his eye was covered with blood clots and small stones. He asked for permission to clean them out. Lin promised that this extra service would be free for him. Lin cut the skin and began to clean out the eye. He was almost done. But it was strange why his knife skills were increasing, not his experience in operations. Now it was time to install a new eye. Most importantly, Lin asked not to move because he might accidentally insert it incorrectly. Lin remembered that he had forgotten to use anesthesia. He seems to have forgotten to use it even when he was sewing the doll's arm back on. But there is nothing wrong with that. Because it doesn't matter now. Lin asked if the demon had passed out. He explained to him that he would use a special glue to hold his eye. It will help the eye stay on and not fall out. With the recovery drops, he guarantees a 95% success rate. The demon told him to shut up and do his job because he couldn't be here anymore. Lin said he would try to do it quickly and let him go early. He asked me to trust him because he was a top-level professional. Lin picked up a hammer and the demon noticed. He asked why he needed this tool. Lin replied that it was the final stage of the operation. And if he broke the hammer, he would have to pay much more. The guy asked him to be patient. Lin took a swing and hit his eye with the hammer with all his might. But after the eye was set, he saw that he had set it very crookedly. The demon was not very happy about it. Lin pulled his eye out again and said it was just a small medical error. He promised to fix it for free. He grabbed the hammer again and put the eye in again. The demon was very scared and hurt. He could no longer be there with Lin. The demon's health was decreasing with each blow. Lin continued to strike. He asked the demon not to move. As a doctor, he was responsible for his health. He must be sure that each of his patients will remain safe and sound. He completed the operation and the task. His reward was skull coins, the doctor's experience, and a special award. For some unknown reason, the pig-headed demon's feeling of gratitude turned into fear during the operation. Therefore, he receives the fear of the pig-headed demon. He gave him medicine and told him to take it twice a day. One to drink and the other to rub on the outside. His vision should be fully restored in 2 days. It cost him 546 coins. If there was no problem, Lin asked to put his handprint on the contract and sign it. The guy said that he could not burden himself now, so he would help him. He took his hand, pressed it to his eye and then made a print on paper. The demon left the money on the table. He asked if he could finally leave. The boy replied that he was now completely free. He discovered an additional task for the pig-headed demon, another stomach. The reward for completing it is skeleton coins, healing experience, and an unlocked visual diagnostics feature. Lin asked the demon to stop. He asked what else he needed from him. Lin said he saw something inside him. He found another problem and asked me to stay for another detailed diagnosis. Dessen got angry because he hated being lied to. But Lin said he was a doctor and could not lie to his patients. Because if he had found a problem but didn't tell us about it, it would have been considered medical malpractice. He decided to trust him, but the demon warned him that if it turned out to be a lie, he would never forgive him. Lin began to take his pulse. During the measurement, Lin's treatment experience was accrued. Lin thought about it. The demon was already getting nervous and trying to find out if he had a problem or not. But Lin was still very concentrated. The pig-like one could not calm down and wanted to hear his problem. Lin said it was neither too big nor too small. It depends on how you treat it. It was an ectopic pregnancy. Silence fell in the store. The demon was so absorbed in his inner world that he could feel the gusts of wind outside the window. Then he abruptly exploded and said it was impossible because he was a male. Lin said he could tell by his pulse. And he is never wrong. The guy promised to take care of him. The demon got angry and grabbed Lin by the collar. He repeated that he was a man and had no uterus. That's why Lin said it was an ectopic pregnancy. The absence of a uterus does not improve the situation. He needs a serious sex change operation and hormone pills. The demon hit the table and said that enough of this talk. At some point, the demon calmed down and Lin asked him what he was thinking about. The demon replied that he was thinking about how to cut him into pieces. Lin asked me to put these thoughts out of my mind. Recently, he had been experiencing bloating and pain in his stomach, dryness and vomiting, loss of appetite. He also asked if he had been bleeding. The demon aggressively asked how he could be bleeding if he had no uterus. Lin asked about other symptoms. Was there anything similar? The demon replied that he just had a stomachache and that was it. It was most likely due to junk food. Lin asked when it started. The pig-like man replied that it started a month ago. Lin assured him that it was impossible to eat something unhealthy every day to make your stomach hurt. He asked when he had last mated and if he had any bad habits in his life. A lot of experience with different pigs or other strange creatures. The pig-headed man said that if he asked him that question again, he would tear him apart. Lin agreed to skip this question. Then they moved on to the next one. How he felt after the last mating. Most likely something like severe pain as if from a tear. The demon became even more aggressive. He asked what it meant and grabbed Lin. The guy asked him to calm down because it was all for his treatment. Most likely, he did not want to die being seriously ill. He let the boy go and sat back down at the table. He gave him one last chance. Therefore, the fertilization took place in an unconventional way. Most likely, he ate something that contributed to this. This thing could have disfigured his internal organs and partially led to a pregnancy. Lin asked if it was true that he had been having trouble eating lately. No matter how much he ate, he was always hungry. The demon wondered how he knew this. Black circles under the eyes, pale face, cold hands. All these symptoms indicate that he is being parasitized by an evil spirit. He prepared a magic potion for the pig-like demon. And he asked me to put my hand down there. This will help them find out if he has an evil spirit inside. The potion seemed to be safe. The demon touched him with his fingertip. Then I started to immerse my hand completely. He was frightened when he saw strange spirits in front of him. He felt a heaviness in his stomach. It felt like it was tearing up inside. It was growing before his eyes and there was nothing he could do about it. Lin threw the frying pan on the floor and watched what was happening. The demon could not fully understand what was happening. From the initial diagnosis, it was an ectopic pregnancy of the parasitic type. But the fetus inside was not yet fully formed. But he was lucky enough to meet Lin. The pig-like man admitted that his behavior was unacceptable and very aggressive towards Lin. He apologized for his behavior. He fell to his knees in front of the boy and asked him to help him and save him from these parasites. It was a real struggle between the essence and the evil spirit, but there is nothing wrong with that. The only thing is that the evil spirit was growing inside him. And they need to find a method to fight it. Stop trying or try everything fix. The guy asked if he had eaten anything unusual lately. He replied that a month ago he had eaten a baby on the street. But at the time, he ate everything and didn't feel full. Therefore, he did not consider it to be eaten. Otherwise, he ate only pork and human remains. We need to check what's inside him. Lin asked me to follow him to the operating room. The demon was very scared. He had barely survived the operation when his eye was inserted. He did not want to go into a bloody operating room. It was depressing for him. But the demon still agreed because he had no choice. When he was already on the operating table, he had a lot of questions. Was Lin sure that all this was necessary? Whether the diagnosis was correct? The only way to understand whether he has an evil spirit is to open his abdomen. If he finds it and cuts it out, they will be able to neutralize it. The demon began to threaten Lin. He said he was going to cut him up himself. He used to kill pigs himself, but now he has to lie under the knife. It was a disaster for him. He asked the guy not to keep him waiting. Because he realized that if it started sooner, it would end sooner. He asked if the demon was ready for surgery. The pig-like man was so excited that he could not say a word. Then Lin asked to wait a moment because he had forgotten a very important detail. He took a marker and put a cross on the demon's stomach. After that, he asked him again if he was ready. The pig-like man replied that he was completely ready. The guy pressed a button and the demon was shackled. This was done to prevent him from doing anything stupid during the operation. He demanded that Lin be more careful. The guy asked me not to shout. These handcuffs were needed to prevent him from making sudden movements. He could harm himself by doing so. The demon asked if Lin had operated on anyone before him. He replied that he had seen his teacher kill a pig and he thought it was very similar to surgery. Lin asked me to calm down and be confident in his surgical skills. The demon looked at the boy again and started shouting that he was not ready. Lin had already sharpened the knife, and he began to refuse. He had to be afraid of the evil spirit that might come out of him. They had to do it today. And Lin swung the knife. It was as if their store had been struck by lightning. He started the operation and Lin's knife experience points began to add up. The demon looked very bad after the operation. It was as if he had been tortured. Lin removed the extra body and said the operation was successful. The father and daughter are safe. A soulless child of blood. It was an evil spirit. It was created from the image and energy of a transparent spirit that had been formed by absorbing large amounts of animal energy. The fully formed spirit of the baby would absorb the soul, body, and blood of the owner, and the pig's soul would turn into true evil. The demon was lying on the table with an open wound on his stomach. He asked me to sew it up. Even though it was not the best time, he had to warn. The price of the operation is 300 coins, but since it was his first time, he will receive a 20% discount. The final price is 240 coins. The demon begged to be stitched up. Lin agreed, but said he would need to pay 40 coins extra. He could do this with hemp thread, woolen thread, or iron wire. He leaned over to the pig-like man and asked him what he would choose. The demon replied that he would choose a hemp thread. He kept yelling for the guy to sew him up. Lin asked him to calm down and he would start soon. He gained experience in sewing. Finally, the boy sewed up the demon. First, he used some kind of potion to treat the stitch. Then he said again that the operation was successful. Lin completed an additional task and his reward is 50 skeleton coins, 50 surgical experience, 50 new experience. He gained 200 fear of the pig-headed demon. His popularity in Wandering Soul Lane increased by 10%. The guy added that his daughter was also fine. Although it is an evil spirit, if you try to raise it. The demon jumped out of bed, threw all his money and ran to the exit. The guy asked him to take his daughter. But he said that he did not need it. He let him take her for himself. Lin tried to catch up with him. Because he was a pharmacist and didn't take care of children. He couldn't just abandon the one he gave birth to. The next time he promised to give him anesthesia, the boy shouted after him, but it was useless. Lin didn't know what to do next. The boy could only leave it for a while. Because when the teacher came back, he would cut it into small pieces and eat it for dinner with wine. Lin buried his eyes. It was a good thing that nothing got into his eyes, because he would have had serious vision problems. Lin's skills improved significantly, and his reputation in the alley of wandering souls grew with each task he completed. Many people felt pity and sympathy for the pharmacy owner's apprentice, but it seemed that this seemingly innocent boy had turned completely evil and adopted the most horrible methods of treatment from his teacher. What it could mean. He was as kind and polite as possible to his patients, and why his methods were called terrible, there was nothing fair or objective about these words. He had 4 special points. He could spend them on improving his physical condition. Because in order to continue working in this evil world, you need to be strong enough. His body really became stronger. Lin had almost forgotten about the pig-headed man's daughter. He did not know what to do with her. Only recently it was at the first level of development, and now it has already risen to the second. He has an additional task. The transparent spirit of the baby is broken because he was born early. But the more fear he gets, the faster he will have the strength to complete his development. He could not believe that there was such a variety of quests. Although the first 3 tasks were very difficult. To begin with, he would have liked to choose the 4th, but the award for it was not fixed. He thought it was a very generous reward. Because the choice he made showed all his responsibility. He completely forgot to feed the baby while doing his own thing. He put it in a glass and said that he had to go out on business. He headed for the door. He went outside and went to his pantry. He wanted to get some food for the baby. Lin opened the basement. And he climbed in. Lin did not fully understand what kind of child he was. In the 2 years he had been here, his teacher hadn't told him anything about children or that they could be born here. But it was better not to ask the teacher anything, because he risked becoming food for this kid. Lin walked into the store and saw that the baby had grown much bigger. He was even bigger than Lin himself. It looks like the system was right. If you leave things as they are, over time, the child will change more and more in appearance. If he doesn't do anything, the pig-headed man won't recognize his daughter. Lin would be the first to die after being around her for a minute. She was getting scarier by the minute. He put her on the operating table and wanted to change her. He wanted to do plastic surgery on her face. Otherwise, she would make the whole street and everything around her look ugly and ugly. He asked her not to move because he was really telling the truth. The first step was completed, and the next step was to fix the face. With every step she took, her fear increased. While Lin was taking care of the child, a burning ghost came to his store. He wanted to change his face. The task is to help the burning ghost change his appearance. The reward is skull coins, surgical experience, and a special award. He asked him to wait inside for now because he still had an unfinished operation and would need to wait. Surprisingly, this ghost also needs plastic surgery. Lin decides to help him with it. She will be able to see his surgical skills. Lin told the burning ghost not to worry. Although he had no experience in plastic surgery, he was very good at clay modeling. For example, kneading clay for figurines is the same as kneading dough. The clay is just stiffer and stronger. It is not too dry and not too wet. Kneading clay is a good test of hand endurance. Lin started tossing the baby and making it into a piece of dough. He did this in front of the ghost. That's why his health was declining. He did not understand what was going on there. Nothing in this store inspired his confidence. His method of work really impressed the ghost. This child was very ugly, so he wants to replace its face with a normal one. He just had to do it. He asked if he would be treated like that too. He was getting scared. Had he really walked into a black magic shop? The child's face was torn in Lin's hands. He had just literally crushed his face with his own hands. Lin said he had to go get his tools. He asked the ghost to wait for him to come back. The ghost saw his smile and realized how terrible he was. The ghost decided to come for treatment here because he learned that the crazy owner had left, but he could not even guess that he would be replaced by another crazy person. Perhaps another time he will not suffer the same fate as this ghost. While the ghost was waiting for the doctor, he thought that a chainsaw started working behind him. He couldn't understand why Lin would need a chainsaw during plastic surgery. When the ghost turned his head, Lin's teacher appeared in front of him with a chainsaw. But in reality, he was imagining it and it was Lin. He had just come out of the pantry with the tools he needed. He apologized for keeping the patient waiting. But the ghost seemed to be going crazy, losing his mental health every minute. And then he started running out of the store. Lin didn't realize what had happened while he was gone. He just went to sharpen his knife. The guy asked why the ghost was leaving. The burning ghost's mission has failed. The burning ghost feels 400 fear of Lin. This is his first customer to reach the level of maximum scared. His reward is skull coins and his popularity has increased by 10%. Lin didn't understand why the system was saying he was most frightened. If he hadn't done anything to scare him. He was even polite and smiling all the time. On the contrary, he should be as happy as possible. He decided to deal with it later. And now he had to finish the job he had started with the pig-headed man's daughter. And now he has finally completed the operation. Now it looks much better. And he is not ashamed to show her to others and even his teacher. Perhaps the pig-headed man will now want to take her home and raise her as his own daughter. Before he passed away, Lin was the best in his class at modeling and drawing. He could not even imagine that he might need it. A third eye began to appear on her forehead. But there was no place for eyes there. Lin was able to mold her face with great effort, so he asked her to take care of it and not let anyone spoil it. Otherwise, so that she wouldn't even think of blaming him for having performed a bad operation. Surgery is not enough to be beautiful. You need constantly monitor your appearance. The girl looked at him and tears began to appear on her face. Most likely, they were tears of joy. So he could complete quests even that the system doesn't mention. There seems to be a lot in it that hasn't been explored. He will try to analyze it as much as possible in the near future. This hair could help him in self-defense. But there were only 5 of them. So for now, he will have to save them for a serious battle. The baby ghost's hair has a great deal of displeasure in it. If the enemy attacks him, he will get tangled in his hair and suffocate to death. While the boy was examining the hair in his hands, the girl raised her hand and, along with her hand, a tentacle appeared, which also rose up. Lin did not notice what happened and thought he was imagining things. It was almost 12 o'clock in the morning, and we had to close the store. To distinguish between day and night in this dark world, one must look at the world from the lamp of the soul. Toward night, the lamp goes out, and during the day it shines brightly. Now the lamp was almost out, so it was night. And this is the time when each monster is in an active state. If you do not hide in the walls of the store, it can attack. And while Lin was removing the lantern, a demon hunter appeared in front of him. He could have just torn him apart. It was a human being. In these 2 years, it was the first time Lin had met a human being here. But he was no ordinary person. He was unrealistically powerful. He said he urgently needed treatment. A battle potion and a potion that restores strength. A dangerous task, to heal a wounded demon hunter. His reward, 500 skull coins, the demon hunter's favor. Punishment for failure to complete the task, death at the hands of the demon hunter. Lin was about to close, but he came just then. He had to invite him in anyway. He sat down at the table and put his bottle on the table. The hunter thought that this was an alley filled with monsters and did not expect to meet a creature of his own race. The man asked how such a seemingly weak guy managed to survive in such an evil world. Lin started an interracial relationship, so the punishment for not completing the task was erased. The guy said he was very happy to see the man and asked what injury he needed to be treated for. Lin was lucky that this man was of the same race as him. Otherwise, he could have very easily cut him down. The hunter got up from his chair. He took off his outer clothing and showed a terrible wound. The system has completed the preliminary stage of the patient's diagnosis. His right shoulder was affected by black butterfly venom. The venom had already penetrated the patient's bones, so the situation was very dangerous. He asked the man if he had actually been bitten by a black butterfly. He was surprised because he did not expect Lin to have such deep knowledge. And he had to admit that he had underestimated the guy. He was almost killed by an evil spirit in red clothes who used this vile poison. He was glad that his body would recover quickly after treatment and he would be able to get back in good shape, and next time he would definitely beat him and get even. Lin promised to cure him. But in reality, he could tell by the way he looked at him. He would just kill the guy if he didn't cure him. Lin asked the system what a black butterfly is. It is a heterogeneous body in the dark world that is completely saturated with the aura of death. For the victim's body, it is deadly and aggressive towards other processes in the body. If an ordinary creature is infected with this poison, the victim's entire body will turn into pus over time. The first step in treatment is to remove the dead skin from the bone. After Lin got the information from the system, he told the hunter that he needed to perform surgery on the outside of his arm first. But the man asked if he had enough skills for such an operation. He replied that he had a lot of experience. Although he had only performed 2 surgeries, his last patient had praised his skills very highly. The man was confused, although this is unusual for his status. He asked if there were any other pharmacies nearby. The boy replied that even if they did exist, his teacher had most likely already dealt with them and destroyed them. He would not allow another pharmacy to exist in the neighborhood. The man decided to have the surgery and said he trusted Lin. Then he was ready to start. The guy sharpened his knives before this operation. It seemed to the hunter that this place did not look like a pharmacy at all. The smell in this house was more like a butcher's shop. And this weak guy causes fear, not calm. Lin asked if the man needed anesthesia. He replied that anesthesia could only affect his nerve reflexes. Real men don't need anesthesia. Lin said that this was very good, because he had never given people anesthesia in his life and did not even know how to do it. After saying that, he stuck the knife into the hunter's shoulder. He asked if this was the way it was supposed to be done. The guy said no, he just needed to test his knife first. The hunter said that it was tolerable, but in fact it hurt a lot, and this guy simply cannot fail this operation because he will definitely not survive the consequences. But before he could prove his point, Lin stabbed him again. This caused the man to contort his face as much as possible in pain. He asked why he was doing it. The guy wanted to find the right size tool, and he needed these 2 as backups. The hunter asked him how he dared to put some spare knives in it. The guy asked me not to worry because it was just a test of the equipment. You need to understand that an incorrectly selected instrument can be harmful during surgery. The part of the arm that holds the knives would be cut off anyway, so he asked the man not to worry. Lin, as a doctor, has to make sure that the knives are a good fit for his meat. The hunter really saw that Lin was a true professional and that his words really made sense. But what was the point of such manipulations? He thought that this guy was deceiving him. He ordered Lin to start treatment, and if he continued to do something he didn't understand, the hunter promised to shoot him. The guy asked him not to be so nervous. Lin put the tools in the fire. The man asked why he was doing this. Lin replied that he was disinfecting them because the venom of the black butterfly is very aggressive and can lead to poisoning. To prevent the venom from spreading to other parts of the body when cutting out the dead part, the venom from the tools must be destroyed by fire. Of course, in the past, this was the way to cut the wool from pigs and cut off the remains with a hot knife. but it didn't matter to the hunter. He just wanted to make sure that the guy had already performed a similar operation. He was ready to start. He warned me that it might be very painful. Of course, a hunter can accept such methods, but is this disinfection? And why is it becoming similar to cooking? He assured the hunter that everything was under control. Lin wore an apron to prevent the poisoned blood from getting on him and harming him. And the dinner plates are for storing his severed skin so that he can use it to make a bed for enhanced muscle growth to replace the ones he will lose. If there was another pharmacy nearby, the hunter would never have come here. Lin said he was starting an operation. He cut off pieces from the hunter and his surgical experience grew again. The man could barely contain himself. He felt pain from cuts, pain from burns, even a blow to the head could not compare to this. This pain was varied in sensations. The guy offered to do anesthesia now if he was in a lot of pain. But he proved to Lin that he was not in pain at all. He asked the man to relax his hand. Because this table was made of antique wood and was very expensive. He said he just liked scratching wood, and he promised to pay twice as much. He asked the guy to continue working and that he might cut off his hand if he didn't shut up. Lin was just waiting for the man to say at least a few words, after which he would continue the operation. Lin, following the man's demands, began to do the work much faster. But the hunter began to scream in pain and asked him to stop immediately. The guy asked why he was causing so many problems. He was not satisfied with either slow or fast work. He also refused anesthesia. He said that he had already done half of the work and they were demanding that he stop. A lot of demands. The man said that it did not look like an operation at all and that he was going to take his organs out alive. And he would cut them as thin as spaghetti. He asked me to continue and stop standing around. The guy mentioned a one-time deal. But the man did not understand what he was talking about. The guy wanted to say that it wouldn't take long to work with the knife, but if he didn't stop moving, he could hit the aorta and he would be dead. He is a doctor and his patients are his children. And he will never let them die because of his treatment. He realized that the man was in pain, so he offered to return to anesthesia once again. But the hunter refused on principle and promised himself that he would never return to that store in his life. But Lin was sure that after the operation he would be grateful for his knife. After a while, the hunter was lying in a puddle of his own sweat and was imagining all sorts of monsters because his body temperature was high. Lin took some liquid and tried to use it to wake the man up. He succeeded and announced that the purge was over. The man begged to be released. He wanted to leave and not suffer anymore. But the guy told him to wait. Because there is one more important step to be completed. It was a special step. He asked to see his hand and said it was beautiful. The man screamed and asked what he had done to him. The guy said he would feel relieved now. But he refused to listen to him and said that he was going to finish him off. But Lin threw a knife into the barrel of the gun. He defended himself with it. He said that he was trying to save the man and do everything he could to keep him alive. And he feels that he is very ungrateful. Even if he wants to kill Lin, he needs to wait until he finishes his treatment. He will not allow his patient to stop halfway. The hunter warned the guy not to even try to lie to him and continue threatening him. He shot at the ceiling and demanded to continue treatment. He asked us to do everything necessary for him to be healthy and regain his lost form as soon as possible. The guy grabbed the man and tied him up. He asked why the guy did it. He was ready to continue the operation and promised not to threaten anymore. But it was not that. He was afraid that afterwards he would not be able to fight the pain, would raise his hand and shoot. It didn't matter if he would die. But if the surgery did not end, it would be the biggest failure in his life. So to prevent this, he tied up the hunter. He replied that if he was afraid of pain, he would have killed him at the beginning of the operation, so there was no need to tie him up. Moreover, these few handcuffs would not be able to hold him. While the man was finishing his sentence, Lin continued to do his job. The man began to writhe in pain again and felt as if he was being punched 1,000 times a minute. The guy said that he was removing dead skin and before the operation he said he was not afraid of pain at all. The hunter demanded to be released immediately. He was not ready to be skinned live. Lin asked me to be patient. Because a real man is not afraid of pain. He advised me to squeeze tightly. Teeth and then he will feel better. The man gave up and asked for anesthesia through tears. Because he could no longer stand the pain. But the guy said that there was no point in using anesthesia now, because his body would not accept it and he was doing well without it. The man broke the shackles and said he no longer believed Lin. He pointed a gun at him and said that he was no longer going to believe his words. The guy grabbed his hand and took the gun. He put it right into the hunter's mouth. And he asked me to let him try it again. And if he did not agree to cooperate with Lin, he promised to kill him with one shot. He tried so hard to save him, to heal his wounds, and in return he wants to kill him. The man promised not to do it again. If he says so, he must still fulfill his promises. Otherwise, his reputation as a doctor would be ruined. He was no longer going to grovel before him. He took the whole process into his own hands. The boy picked up a chainsaw and approached the man. He asked why he was doing this and what he was up to. Lin said that his bones were very hard. To get all the dead skin off them. It takes a lot of time, so a short pain is better than a long one. He decided to use this giant to cut off all the excess in one go. The hunter asked me to wait. The hunter's mental state decreased by 20 units. While Lin was conducting the transaction, a new customer walked into the store. It was a girl. She said she wanted to buy a few bottles of a restorative potion. She was grabbed by a hunter who was trying to run away from Lin. The girl looked behind the door. I saw Lin there with a chainsaw, cutting off the hunter's arm. He recognized the girl and asked if she had come to get her potions. He asked me to wait a minute, he would bring them as soon as he was done with this patient. Fear of a long-haired ghost increased by 30 units. She turned around and started running away from the store. Lin didn't understand how anyone could say that he scared customers. He was always smiling and friendly. His main goal is the comfort of his clients. This system has no right to give him such a humiliating achievement. While Lin was talking to the girl, he noticed that the man was trying to escape somehow. But the operation was not over yet. And finally, the operation was completed and the poison that got into the hunter's body was completely removed. It remains to regenerate the cleansed skin and blood lost during the operation, and his shoulder will be normal. Lin tried to wake the man up, but he was unconscious. After a while, he finally woke up and did not even realize where he was. As soon as he saw Lin, he started shouting at him not to come near him and started shooting with a gun. The guy fell to the floor. None of the bullets hit him. He asked the man to calm down and said that he had completely healed his wound. He threw away the chainsaw and suggested that they forget all the conflicts they had during the operation. The hunter noticed that he no longer felt pain. And he did not have the tearing sensation from the poison. All the horrible sensations now seemed like a bad dream. Lin said that the poison from the damaged muscles and bones had been removed from the shoulder. The only thing left to do is to start the regeneration of muscles and blood in the body. So he decided to use the best regeneration potion in his shop especially for the hunter. Fortunately, he had a strong and healthy body, and most of his muscles and blood had already been restored. Nevertheless, the small area could not yet grow back, so he decided to sew a small amount of flesh from another creature to the area. But he assured the man that there was no need to worry, because he had already taken care of any possible trouble. The man noticed that it was pigskin. He grabbed the guy and asked him why he was doing it. Why he had sewn pig meat on him. Although the operation did not go perfectly as Lin expected, the result is excellent. The guy said that if he had any problems with this prosthesis, he could always come to him for a free consultation. Lin wished him good reuse and good luck. The hunter was angry. He did not like the fact that he was wearing pig meat. Even if we take into account all the mistakes Lin made during the operation. But compared to the fact that the man's body could have turned into a piece of rotten flesh, this was just a wonderful result. It saved his life and even managed to save a limb. In this dark world, only one thing mattered, and that was to stay alive. The man agreed that there is nothing better in this world than life. As expected from a creature of his race, the opportunity to live in such a dark world is still a miracle. And it was thanks to torture that he was able to realize this. But he grabbed the guy and told him not to even think that he was praising him. And he asked if he had performed operations before him. He swore that he had performed a C-section. Both father and daughter are perfectly fine. They even liked him. He dared to remove the venom of the black butterfly and its bones after a cesarean section. Although it sounds like nonsense, he was able to completely heal its wounds. He turned to Lin and told him not to tell anyone that he had fainted from pain and was screaming constantly. He asked for anesthesia. He promised not to disclose his secrets. The confidentiality of their clients is the key to their reputation. The man asked how much he owed for the operation. He said he would never come to this stupid store again in his life. The guy said he didn't need to pay, just asked him to visit their store more often in the future. The guy wanted to provide a free service to this man first, and then maybe they could use him as a money tree. But the man told him not to think that his flattery would make him forget about what happened during the operation, even though they were of the same race. He had always been a loner and would never have taken a weakling like Lin with him. He advised him not to stay here for long. As a human, he had no chance of surviving here. He risked becoming dinner for the monsters. He asked how he could leave this world. Lin didn't even know how he got here. He didn't know anything about the outside world except for this store. There are many people like him who came here from other worlds. But most of them have already been swallowed up by the world. He could only say that the biggest bottom in this world is the city of sin. And if he wanted to leave this world, the best way was to die. There was another way. It was to become stronger. Strong enough to run away. Will the boy stay in this world and in this store forever? Every time he encounters a monster, he is overcome with a sense of fear of death. The hunter loved justice, so he was in favor of a fair exchange. Lin had healed his wounds, so the man could not treat him badly, even when he did not take the money. The hunter opened his cloak and offered to choose one thing that the boy could take away. The guy sat down and started looking at the items. He had no idea what he should choose. He liked revolvers. Just as he reached out to take the revolver, the man grabbed his arm and said that it was clear that Lin knew a lot about valuable items. Because he immediately reached out for the best thing he had. This weapon was amazing. He asked why the boy didn't look to see who they belonged to. Lin asked if he had killed demons with them. But the man said he had not killed anyone with them. Lin wondered why. He threw the boy away from him. He jumped back against the wall and waited for something unusual to happen. The guy was running through different answers to the man in his head. They were the best, but they have a serious drawback. And it's probably already known to the guy. To be more precise, these two revolvers were once cursed, and no matter what angle you shoot from, the bullet will still miss the target. He usually uses them to appear dangerous because they are not capable of anything else. Then he decided to give them up. The man shot at Lin with one of them and not a single bullet hit him. He was the person who devoted the most time to justice and reliability, and if he chose this weapon, he had no right to give it up. If he did otherwise, it would mean that he considered himself superior to the owner. He agreed to give him another chance. Either he will use it according to the rules or he will leave with nothing. The main thing was that he put the gun away. Lin said he really wanted to use his last chance. He could not get rid of this weapon for a long time because of the curse. And finally someone else will take it over. The guy did not understand what he was talking about. He was unable to get rid of the gun because of the curse. Only members of the human race can show such a keen desire to get something. But these revolvers can only be transferred through fair trade. In addition, there are few people in this world. So it was not easy to find someone to give it to. Now the boy realized that the hunter wanted to deceive him on purpose. He tormented him before the operation as much as he does now. So they are even. Lin had done a very good thing for him, so he wanted to tell him something very important. Tonight, under no circumstances should you make any noise, turn on the lights, and especially not open the door to anyone. They have very unusual creatures living next door to them. Lin asked the hunter what kind of monster he was talking about. But he replied that it was better for him not to know. He added that if he could survive until tomorrow, they would most likely see each other again. The demon hunter said the same words as his master. He decided that he really needed to be careful that night, to avoid getting into any trouble and to survive. There is still half an hour left in the night, and no normal monster should come at this time. Nevertheless, the level of the pharmacist has risen again. At this rate of development, it won't be long before it becomes difficult to manage. He took out the gun he had inherited from the hunter and pointed it at the girl. That way he could check if he really missed. Although he didn't believe in curses, he was really shooting off target. All the bullets flew by, but none of them hit. He decided to try again and fired 10 times, but again there was no result. Only the girl's fear grew. As soon as night fell, Lin quickly took the lantern away. He ran into the store and locked the door with a huge padlock. As soon as the light of the soul's lantern goes out and the sky is covered in darkness, this night will be its greatest test. Because anyone can break into his vault. The boy got into bed with the girl and covered her head with a sheet. So far, nothing terrible had happened, they were just waiting for the night to end. And then there was a knock. He introduced himself as his teacher and said that he was being chased by an evil spirit. The guy was surprised that he came back so early. The man outside the door insisted that he be let in quickly or his teacher would die. Lin took hold of the pen. Then he grabbed a knife and said that no one from the outside would save them, so he would die anyway. After saying that, he killed him with the knife through the door. He didn't even check to see who was behind the door. But he knew perfectly well that if the teacher was really outside, Lin would have been killed by his teacher for trying to open the door. Moreover, he would never have returned at such a time, so this man could not be a teacher. Lin hoped he had left. The boy decided to listen to what was happening there and leaned against the door with his face. And in a moment the monster's hand broke the door and wanted to grab Lin. The monster said it would eat him and wanted to tear him apart and chew him slowly, piece by piece. But it didn't help because 10 of the same hands started punching through the door. They grabbed him and threatened to eat him. He decided to use the hair of an evil spirit and hoped it would work. The hair of the evil spirit enveloped all hands. Lin stood and watched what was happening. These ghosts couldn't be stronger than him, so he took and pulled his hair. The hands fell without signs of life in the shackles of the evil spirit's hair. He didn't know if the monster was still alive, so he decided to make a few more stabs to be sure. He killed the ghost and received a reward of 100 experience points. But the boy did not believe that the monster could die so easily. As soon as the night came, monsters came to the door of the store. Who knows what else might be hiding behind them? Lin understood that he would not sleep at all today. And began to clean the room of blood. And then the system sent him a warning that monsters of the maximum level of evil are approaching him. Lin thought that this might be the giant that was supposed to appear tonight that the hunter had talked about. The guy stood by the door and thought about it. He did not understand how to prepare for a possible attack by dangerous monsters. And then a hand appeared again at the door. After that, he decided to look into the hole. There he saw a monster with huge eyes, which looked clearly into the boy's eyes and caused irresistible fear. He looked terrible and started to stink. It was as if he had specially released such a smell, in order to possibly attract the attention of other monsters. Lin could feel the heartbeat of this monster through the door. The boy felt as if he was licking the door with his tongue. This sound seemed very sweet to him. As if it was a small child or some cute monster licking ice cream. But when he reached his tongue into the house, Lin took his words back and said that this creature couldn't be cute. His tongue was huge and the boy tried not to make any sound so as not to get into his mouth. The monster moved its tongue closer and closer to Lin. And as a result, he began to lick his face and body. The boy continued to try to behave quietly and not attract attention. He hoped the monster would stop and take its tongue. Lin tried to calm himself down and not panic. Otherwise, he understood that he would simply be eaten. He began whispering in Lin's ear that he needed a doctor and that he had a very bad toothache. Lin thought that maybe he didn't come to eat him, but to meet the doctor and get first aid. But the fact is that they are closed at night and he cannot violate these rules. The monster said that if the boy refused to help him, he would eat him. Lin immediately ran over and grabbed the doorknob and opened it to let his client in. He was very kind because he didn't want to become a monster's late dinner. If you hear a child's laughter at night, if you see a glimmer of light in the dark, in no case should you go for it, because it is not a gift of fate, but an ordinary bait in the abyss. He immediately asked how he could help. The monster replied that she had a very bad toothache and demanded help or promised to eat Lin if he did not cure her. He smelled a terrible smell of rot from her. He asked her to calm down and said that he would definitely cure her. To begin with, he needed to understand what exactly was troubling the monster and the cause of the pain. Lin added that teeth are a small thing. But he understood that he himself needed to calm down despite all her disgust. She was still his patient, so he had to continue to treat her and serve her as if nothing strange was happening. He tried to prove to himself that she was cute enough. He asked her which tooth was hurting. The monster replied that the rear upper jaw. He asked to open his mouth so that he could clearly find out what the problem was and make a diagnosis. He climbed completely into her mouth. The system sent him a task to cure a toothache. And there was no penalty for an unfulfilled task in it, but he understood that this was only a formality because if he did not fulfill her request, he would be eaten. Because her mouth was dark, it was difficult to see anything to make a diagnosis. He had to spend his energy on unnecessary thoughts and play the underdog. He continued to study her mouth. The monster took its eye and raised it in its mouth so that Lin could see it better. Light radiated from the eye as if from the sun. It was safe to say that the contents of the monster's body were very diverse. The smell inside was horrible. And among all the objects, Lin noticed a holy spear. He entered the dark world from another dimension. Contains sacred blessings and can restrain evil spirits and demons. This spear was like a witch's weapon. And this object brought the patient unbearable constant pain and torment. The monster demanded that he pull out his spear.